Welcome back to Tanakh Talk, another episode of Controversial Issues with the most controversial rabbi on the internet, Rabbi Chaim, the man Coffman from the Holy Land. Welcome back. Checkmate. How are you, sir?
Go on, you can't do it with a straight face. Very hard.
It kind of
doing.
For me, it doesn't really.
We're doing great. Doing great as usual.
That's good. That's good. So
always a pleasure to be here.
So I've got it set up for now. Granted, we may. Oh, I got to make myself available here. We may or may not get calls because we've never really had a call-in show in this in like 2 years. So it very well could be that we may not get any calls tonight. But if we do, that'd be awesome. The number is going to be on your screen, folks, in just a moment. But glad to have you here. Glad to have you here as well, Rabbi. Let me put up the other part that needs to be visible so people can know where to call into. One moment, please. There it is right there. Good deal. All right. So there we go. Okay. Phone number's on your screen, 855-952-4253. So call in with your questions. We finished up after 6 episodes. Hey, Jeff Johnson, Paul Brewer, welcome. Andrea, thank you for being here, as you usually always are. Much appreciated. So, and I'm going to put the number here also, 855-952-4253. So call in with your comments. Just save the angry comments for the complaint department, which is written on the back of my hand.
That's your department. That's you. Send all the complaints there.
Oh, there we go. We actually have a call, so let's take this call, see what's up. All right, caller, you are live on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from. Hey, I can barely hear you. Let me make sure my computer. Sit tight with me just for a minute. I've got a different laptop using for the calls here. 1 second. Let's make sure I've got you on. Make sure my volume's up. I'll tell you what, let me do this. I don't think I can merge the call with my phone. Actually, can you hear me now? Let me try this real fast.
Yes, I'm hearing you better.
That's weird. Actually, I answered from my computer, but it went to my phone. Okay, so go ahead with your question. I can hear you on my phone. I'll have to repeat it to the rabbi.
Oh, okay. So this is a question for Rabbi Coffman.
Sure.
I would like to speak about the sin of Adam.
The sin of Adam.
Yes, I learned that when he disobeyed God, he had initially good intentions because he felt like
Do me a favor. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to have you, I would put you on speakerphone. I'm going to have you talk into the microphone with my speakerphone and see if Rabbi can hear you and see if everybody else can hear you. Go ahead and start from the top with your question regarding Adam.
Hello, Rabbi Coffman. This is David Sang calling from Queens.
Okay, can hear you loud and clear.
Hey, how are you? The audio is a little, because I am on speaker, it's a little hard for me to hear you, but I hope you are able to hear my question.
Okay.
Okay, so I would like to ask you a question about the sin of Adam. We once learned that when Adam decided to disobey God, he did it with a good intention of thinking if he were to overcome his evil inclination, then he would be elevated more for doing the right thing. But my question is, did he do that for the sake of his own benefit, or is that considered doing it for the sake of heaven?
Okay, good question.
Okay, before you continue, Rabbi, hang on, don't continue. Okay, thank you for your call. Go ahead and hang up now and tune in for your answer, okay? Thank you. Okay, Rabbi, if you would, please, for the majority of the viewing audience, please explain the premise of the question so we can all, like even myself, I'm not sure I understood the question. I heard it, I get it, but I don't get it. Could you rephrase it so that we can, so I can wrap my head around it?
I got you. It's just so funny, I got it, I didn't get it, maybe you got it. Okay, we'll see. It's like hot potato.
I love you too,
you take it, I take it. This, it's a good thing. It's a good thing it's the middle of the night for me, because if I was more awake and I had caffeine, I'd probably have a better answer. The question, it seems, is the sin of Adam, right? It's a good question. The sin of Adam, that he disobeys God, right? He goes against God, and the question is, if he goes against God, was he thinking, what did he do it for the sake of heaven? Right? Or in general, like basically what was he thinking, that if he goes against God and let's say evil, sort of the evil inclination goes inside of him, right? And that's really going to be part of the answer. And that is, is he doing what's better? What he thinks is better. In other words, is it for the sake of heaven? That was basically the question. Right? Yeah, is that clear?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so the Gemara actually calls Adam a heretic. Why does it call him a heretic? Because Adam went against what God said. God told him, whatever you do, don't eat from the tree of knowledge. Right? You can do anything else, eat from anything else, don't eat from the tree of knowledge. Now, that being the case, what did Adam think? Adam thought, okay, at that time, even before he ate from the tree, the evil inclination is outside of him. If the evil inclination is outside of a person, then they understand that there are things that are bad. In other words, if you would walk into the forest and see a huge pit, he understood, or a person would understand, if I fall in the pit, I could get hurt. Okay, that's something external. But what did he think? He thought like this: if I put evil inside of myself, and every single second I do the right thing, and I go in the right path, so that means exponentially I get merit. Meaning, I have a choice to do between good and evil. If I choose good, that means I get unbelievable merit. Unbelievable amount of merit. And I elevate the body and I elevate the soul. If, God forbid, the person chooses to do evil, they go according to their evil inclination, that means you debase the body and you debase the soul. So what does that mean in the vernacular? In the vernacular means that I take like 5 steps backwards. So in order to get to 0, I have to take 5 steps forward, right, in order to get to 0. So therefore I can either elevate the body and the soul, or, God forbid, debase the body and the soul. So you have the right idea, right? In other words, if you if you have a choice between good and evil, and you choose good, right? So your soul gets elevated. So that's a huge thing. If you choose to do the wrong thing, just the opposite. But there's only one problem, right? What's the major problem? The major problem is God said, I don't think so. I didn't create the world for that. So then God had to change. God had to go to plan B. Plan B is the fact that he brought death to the world. Bringing death to the world, definitely not a Jewish concept. 100% not a Jewish concept. But God had to go to plan B. So Adam thought, I'm going to reinvent the wheel. 100% I'm going to reinvent the wheel. And could be that he was right. He didn't do it just say, okay, I'm going to sin for the sake of sinning. Right? 100%, right, as Carl mentioned, that, why did he do it? He did it for one very simple reason, right? Because he understood. He understood exponentially what could happen.
Okay, 2 minutes.
In a good way.
I'm going to get what I want to do is, since we're going to have callers, there's been a lot of callers already. Let's try to handle each question like within a 10-minute barrier, if you don't mind. So you got a couple minutes left on this, so we can take the next caller. So wrap it up, baby.
I'm going to tell one story.
Okay.
I once got up to speak somewhere, and they said, Rabbi, you have 8 minutes. I said, what do you mean? I can't speak in less than 15 minutes on any topic. Right? It's a problem. So in short, since he tried to reinvent the wheel, God said that's not what I wanted. That was not the purpose for creation. So therefore, God calls Adam a heretic. Why? Because he went against what he said, even for the sake of heaven. Right? In other words, even if God says, I agree, you're 100% right. There's only one problem. That's not what I created the world for. Right? So therefore, the Gemara says that God calls him a heretic. And therefore, even for the sake of heaven, he made a serious mistake.
Okay, very good. Very good. I'm trying to make sure my volumes are up here. So, all right, we're going to try to take this caller. You're live on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Harry from Florida. I want to ask the rabbi if he can give me a good explanation for Tzimtzum.
Tzimtzum. Okay. So Harry from Florida, thank you for your call. And
Thank you.
Tzimtzum coming to you. Thank you, boss. Tzimtzum. That's not a Chinese dish or nothing like, right? Okay.
It could be. It could very well be. But Tzimtzum it's kind of hard to define. It's it's a Kabbalistic term. It's a Kabbalistic term which basically means that how did God create the world? How did God create the world? So God created the world with what we call this idea of Tzimtzum, the way I understand it. Again, I'm certainly not an expert, certainly, in Kabbalah, right? But here, at the beginning of creation, God, what does God refer to? God is referred to as called Ein Sof. What does Ein Sof mean? It's got no beginning, right? Literally, has no end. Let's say better, right? Has no end. So what did God do? God created something out of nothing, right? What we call ex nihilo. God created something from nothing. He created something finite out of something infinite. Now, what's the $1.5 million question, which we always have to ante over here? It should be 1.1 right now. Regardless, how did he do this? How is it possible for someone who's infinite, right? He's not bound by time or by space, right? Also, we'll ask the question. It's always good to answer a question with a question. Exodus chapter 25, verse 8, it says God wants to dwell amongst the Jewish people, right? He wants you to make a box, i.e. the Mishkan, the tabernacle, in order for God to dwell amongst the Jewish people. What's the problem? How in the world do you put God in a box? God is infinite, right? He's not limited by space or by time. So the idea, Kabbalistically, is there's an idea what we call Tzimtzum, some sort of aspect of what we call some sort of constriction, let's say contraction, however this works, of God's power. And what does it do? It gets streamed into this world where, even though it's coming into the world, there's going to be concealments, right? That's one explanation, right? According to the Arizal of Isaac Luria, right, of blessed memory, what did God do? He went from infinite to finite, right? Again, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to explain how we can go from one aspect, something infinite, something finite, and contract, constrict, whatever this is, it's something, we have to understand, as we said, that God has no end. So there's this aspect of this light, right? This physical life. It's light is something intangible. What does light do? It gives life, it gives warmth, etc. But what does it also refer to? It's a metaphor for God's power, right? For divine power, right? So therefore, God took this infinite light, right, in a certain way, however it was, manifested it in a way, created a vacuum for this light, to be revealed. You're going to say, okay, very good, sounds very esoteric, right? So we'll make an analogy, take a ray from the sun, right? It's within the sun, but the ray itself has no independent identity. Nullified by what? Ray of light of itself. It can be recognized, be perceived, certainly as, an independent, identity, as well as this concealment, as the Arizal says, right? It's radical in the sense that, it's going something from, that's finite, it's infinite, to something that's finite, that something's supposed to come out to the world, right? Something that's supposed to surface, in the world, right? And that's why the prophet says, God, I haven't changed. He's the same before creation, after creation, etc. Right? So basically, in short, there's this idea of a contraction, a refraction, something like that of divine power that gets streamed, into a finite world, right? That's, again, sort of what it means, right? But again, it's hard to fathom of something that is infinite, and you're putting something infinite into something that's finite, right? That's essentially, I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense, right? But that's essentially, at least, simple explanation according to Kabbalah that I can give on that topic.
Okay, good deal. You finished that with 4 minutes to spare. Okay, we're going to take the next caller. Caller, you
Look
heard
at that. I'm doing good.
you did good. Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from. Caller, you're live on the air.
Hi, yes, my name is Abel Chavez. I'm from Houston, Texas.
Abel, welcome. How are you, brother?
Hi, yeah, I have a question. So I have a question and a comment.
Actually, right
By
now,
any
let's just real quickly, Abel. Sorry, we're going to leave this just for Q&A only. We have a lot of callers. Okay, so just whatever your question is, if you would.
Okay,
please.
the question is, did the Tanakh, did they inverse human nature? In other words, did they put the good guys as the bad guys and the bad guys as the good guys in any way as to form the world that we have today? In other words, Jesus and Judas are one and the same person. Thank you.
Okay, so if you're still on the phone, sit tight for a second. So I have heard that Jesus and Judas are the same person, but I also heard Judas. I heard different things about that. I'm not sure I fully understand.
They masqueraded the potential for reincarnation. They flipped the whole story around.
Okay. I'm
And
not sure.
The Shroud of Turin is the proof for reincarnation. So somebody masqueraded the whole story around. So my question is any chance in the Torah, in the Tanakh, that the human nature was inverted in such a way as to have the world that we have today?
I'm not sure there's an answer for that, but I'll definitely turn it over to Rabbi. So thank you for your call. I appreciate you calling in. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. So I'm still not.
I'm so glad I get all the easy questions.
So do you understand the question?
I don't have any other questions.
Do you
No,
understand the
There's,
question?
I think I understand the question.
Okay. Once again, repackage it for me. Like,
okay.
restate
If
the
I
question
understand the
completely
question,
differently so we can have more options on what we're talking about.
I'm not sure I 100% understand the question. I mean, I
Okay.
think, if I understood correctly, if there's an inversion,
Okay.
right, of, one person being somebody else, or, reincarnation, was that put into the world? Was that necessarily put into the world for the sake of, people that are good, people that are bad, and how all that manifests itself? I think that was as far as I understood the question.
Got it. Okay, go for it.
So, it was explained to me, one of my rabbis very much steeped in Kabbalah, once explained to me that, that there's a book, never been translated. It's called by the Rizal of Isaac Lurie. It's called Sefer Gilgulim. What's the book of Gilgulim? A Gilgul means someone's reincarnated, right? So the Arizal of blessed memory goes through a whole checklist of who's reincarnated into who. If you go through Tanakh, right? Who is who and what's going on? What's going on behind the scenes. I'll give one example. I'll give one. Well, it's not actually reincarnated, but I'll give an example. Hopefully this will explain it. We see in the book of Ruth. You see the book of Ruth that you have Ruth and Orpah, right? Ruth and Orpah. Ruth goes in the direction, still wants to convert. She tells Naomi, "Your people are my people. I don't care. I'm not going to be dissuaded. I'm not going to be, pushed away, and all that. I'm gonna do whatever, whatever you want me to do, whatever the Torah says. I'm gonna do that. Orpah had a choice. What happened to Orpah? Orpah says, you know what? It's been nice. It's been real. I'm out of here, right? So Orpah goes and does whatever she does. And who's an offshoot of Orpah? An offshoot of Orpah is Goliath. Who's an offshoot of Ruth? Right, 3 generations. Right, 4 generations later is King David, right? Future Messiah. Now, what do you have? You have Ruth, who clung to the Torah. She clung to the Torah, comes out of her as King David, right? The progenitor of of going to be the Davidic line, the future Messiah. Who comes out of Orpah, right? None other than, Mr. Goliath himself. So you have a clash, major clash, good and evil, right? David defeats Goliath. Now that's one example. Might not be necessarily the best example, right? But I think it's a good example. But as we mentioned before, you can have sparks of people come back to this world, reincarnated in order to do certain things, or in order, let's say, maybe to go against certain people or fix up certain sins, right? They say that Abel was, that there was a spark of Abel, in Moshe Rabbeinu, right? In other words, Abel died, didn't have children, right? As the Torah says, that the ground cried out, the blood cried out, all his descendants, and all that. So, he came back, as parts, of Moses himself. So we can see, and as this great rabbi of mine told me, he said, if you see what's really going on, and I've never, gone through the book myself, but if you see what goes on in history and who is who and what, and what's transpiring, he says you have to have a tremendous, tremendous amount of fear of heaven. Because if you don't have a lot of fear of heaven, a lot of things we see, certainly in Tanakh, no question about it, what we see, certainly at face value doesn't make sense. That's not logical in many ways. But you can have people come back in order to fight off things, ward things, or whatever. That's not, that's definitely not, an uncommon thing. So I don't know if that necessarily answers the question, but that's what I think the root of the question is.
All right. Well, that's going to work for us. So we're going to take the next caller. Wait, I got so many things going on right now. Let me stop this timer real fast. Get rid of that. Okay, so now going on to the next call. I need to start writing the numbers down because I think we're having some call-ins. Okay, caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Hello?
Yes, you're live on the air.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Okay. So I'd like an anonymous question.
First of all, could you... Oh, you said anonymous. Okay, cool. No worries.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Bye. And I'm not sure this is really fair to ask you. It may be better to ask Rabbi. Because you're on the air tonight, I thought, well, I'll call in and ask the question anyway.
Sure.
The Rabbi Singer constantly is saying that Matthew is saying that Yeshua was born by a virgin, according to Matthew. But I would propose that Matthew is absolutely explicit that it's not a virgin birth.
Okay, so quick question for you. But before you go too far, do you have a question for us? If you have a question, please tell us your question.
Yes. The question is, why do so many rabbis claim that Matthew is claiming a virgin birth when he's not claiming a virgin birth? Because it says explicitly in the very first verse, this is the record of the genealogy of Jesus. It doesn't say this is the record of the genealogy of Joseph. It says this is the record of the genealogy of Jesus. And then it proceeds to give over 40 paternal ancestors of Jesus.
Okay, I have an off-the-wall question for you. And this is purely coming genuinely.
Okay.
You sound like you are a messianic Christian. Am I correct? You're messianic.
Not even close.
Okay,
I'm Orthodox Jew.
So to clarify, I thought you were defending the New Testament, which is why I said that. But then, which was my question: why would you refer to Jesus as Yashke if you were a New Testament believer? So I'm glad you clarified that. Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So it seems to me that Matthew 1 is a direct contradiction of the whole virgin birth scenario put out by the church, because it says clearly that this is the record of the genealogy of Jesus, and not specifically Joseph, even though Joseph is listed. And it says that Joseph is in this genealogy. So according to Matthew 1, Joseph is the father of Jesus, not the Holy Spirit, not God the Father, nothing.
Right.
So here's my question simply and succinctly. Why don't the Orthodox acknowledge that?
Okay, so I've got a simple answer for you. I'll go ahead and hang up now to free up the lines for the other caller. And the answer in short is that there are different genealogies. There's two different genealogies mentioned. One would seem to be the genealogy of Joseph, maybe. The other one is the genealogy of Mary. But either way, it turns out where Jesus was born of a virgin birth, according to the overall blanket of the New Testament, which means he couldn't qualify to be the Messiah anyway. So it doesn't really even matter, to be honest with you. So that's sort of an answer in short. And I know this is not your area, Rabbi Coffman. This is why I kind of like blurted it out there, and I'm definitely open to anything else you would like to add to that for sure. So, okay.
Yeah, I just want to, I'll just mention one thing. I mean, it is an interesting question in the fact that, if they're going to claim it's a virgin birth, how do you have genealogy?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That doesn't make sense from either side.
Right.
In other words, if you're gonna claim one thing, it can't be the other. An apple can't be a banana, right? And a banana cannot be a potato. You can't compare two things that make absolutely, no sense, because that would be the case. And how can they mistranslate, that verse?
Right.
That verse that says that she was a virgin or whatever. Or that she was whatever, that whole mistranslation. Because if you're going to go through a whole mistranslation, right, then you can't have a genealogy, right? That in and of itself doesn't make sense.
Right. The weirdest thing for me,
that's what I would answer.
The strangest thing that I had learned was, first of all, that Paul, being the majority author of the New Testament, and also the first author of the New Testament, not Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but it was actually Paul. And Paul never heard of a virgin birth before, so. It's interesting how all the collective letters, not books, letters of the New Testament got put together, and the virgin birth became the main narrative of it. Whenever Paul knew nothing of it at all, so I'm thinking it's just it kind of falls apart pretty quickly. So
wasn't it Paul, John, and Ringo? That wasn't it all three?
Oh, you're naughty.
So I had to throw that in. All right, next.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a question at you because it's one I actually put into text earlier. So I'm going to say this. Now, what I'm going to tell you that the Christians say isn't really even important. What's more important is what Judaism says on this answer. So the Tetragrammaton, which is the Yud and the K, I'm going to say K instead of Hey, the Yud and the K and the Vav and the K, right? They translate the Tetragrammaton, the Yud meaning hand, of course, and then the Hey, K, whatever would be, was it arms spread or something like that, and then the Vav would be the peg. They call it the stake that nailed Jesus to the cross. And then the final Hey, it's like, behold, the hand, the nails that executed. They really play those four letters out by select to try to prove that in the simple form name of Hashem, because there's a 42-letter name of God, etc., etc.
Right.
But in just a simple form of the Tetragrammaton, that from the very mark of creation, that he was telling us that Jesus was the Messiah from the very beginning, just by using his own name. So, if you could tell me more, what would be properly the Yud and the Hey and the Vav, what would be the description of those independent letters? Like the Yud would be the hand. The Hey, the Vav, I heard wasn't even a nail. It was more like a hook or something like that. So, which doesn't work out for Christianity, but they like to call it a peg or a stake. But I've heard that the actual Vav is more of a hook, not a peg or a stake or something like that. So, so if you could just kind of elaborate on that just a little bit while we're giving some time for the callers to call back in.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that. You have a 42-letter name, of God, but, interesting enough, what does it really mean? So, we could, get into Kabbalah, and you got the Yud, the Yud, the K, whatever, Yud Vav, Yud K, Vav K, etc. But what does it really mean? Let's get to the roots. Let's get to the root over here. What does it really mean? Right? Because Moshe asked God, in the book of Exodus, what am I going to tell the Jewish people? What are you called? What is your name? So what does God say? What does God answer him? He said, I am that I am, right? Or I will, or he is who he will be, right? That's how it's you could say, well, it's future tense, right? I will be who I will be. But God represents past, present, and future, right? So it means that, you could look at it allegorically as well, where God says, I will be with the Jewish people when they sin, after they sin, when they're in the land, when they're outside the land, etc. So,
Okay.
It could be, again, certainly not my area of expertise.
Okay,
right?
Rabbi,
But it could be, okay, maybe.
Let me interrupt real fast
go
because
ahead.
I don't want to have you addressing the wrong question. So the question is, for example, let's pick with the letter Vav. They say the letter Vav means nail or peg, something you could like drive into a wall with a hammer, right, or a piece of wood or whatever. What is the meaning of the letter Vav? Like Dalet would be door, Yoda's hand, right? So what is the meaning of Vav? Just as one of the parts of this question.
I know I have to kill everybody to explain it, right? This is Kabbalah. this is Kabbalah 101. 101 or 101A. So
Yes.
What does it represent? I don't know. That I can't answer. That's not my.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Got it.
It could be. It could be the Vav could represent also different words for redemption. There are 4 different words of redemption. That's why we have 4 cups of wine. In the book of Exodus.
Okay.
And it says that God's going to bring out the Jewish people. Vehotsetzi, right? He's going to bring out. God is going to take revenge on the Egyptians. The Ga'alti, right? An outstretched arm.
Okay.
Right? He's going to redeem the Jewish people. Right? Velakachti means I'll take you out. Right? Some says, you will know, or I will take you out. Or vehafti, I will bring you. Right? I'll bring you in. So, it could represent that as well.
Okay. Let me let's do this. Since we're kind of on the topic of the Christian is trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip, and I use that almost as a pun unintentionally. Blood out of okay. They believe that the Messiah's purpose is to save the entire world of their sin. They believe the Messiah's purpose is he should be worshipped. They believe the Messiah's identity will be divine. Can you talk about those 3 items?
Yeah, first item is that go back. What the first item is that he's supposed let's say he's supposed to be worshipped.
That's one of them. Yeah, that's one of them.
So one aspect. So you tell me the other 2. One aspect is that, at least according to them, he's supposed to be worshipped. Even when the Messiah comes and miracles are going to be done and all that, he's coming back as a human, right? There's a spark of the Messiah in every generation. Doesn't mean that person who knows he's the Messiah, the question is he allowed to reveal himself or not? If he's not allowed to reveal himself, that means he doesn't come. That spark goes somewhere else. But even if the spark goes to someone else, that future Messiah, whoever it's going to be flesh and blood.
And will not be worshipped.
If he's going to be flesh and blood, then, say again?
And they will not be worshipped.
He's not going to be worshipped. You can't worship. You can't change the Torah. 100% you can't change the Torah. Right? In other words, you can't worship a person. So if you can't worship a person, that doesn't make any sense. That's idolatry.
Right.
Or another force. Doesn't matter if it's a person or, the stars, the moon, wind, whatever. These are all forces God put into the world. They don't have their own. They can't do anything on their own.
Right.
If the wind, the wind of the ocean decides they're going to make a tsunami, make an earthquake, make a tsunami, and destroy half of Southeast Asia and put Atlas back on the map, no pun intended, God can say yay or nay. They don't have their own power. If you say they have their own power and God's so great and so lofty and whatever, and etc. So that means God, God's not infinite. God's not in control of everything. In other words, he didn't just put these things into existence and let them go, right? They can't do anything. Nothing can do anything without God willing it, right? So that would be the, the first part of that. What were the other?
Okay.
What were the other two
So
aspects?
is the Messiah going to be sent here to die for our sins to save us from sin?
No. We know that, the prophets talk about, the great day, about resurrection, right? What is resurrection, and what are we doing here in this world in general? The Ramchal says in the beginning of Derech Hashem, the way of God, he brings down according to Kabbalah, right? Everyone has an evil inclination. See, Torah is always, connected here. We have a good inclination, we have a bad inclination, right? If we do the right thing, right, as we said before, the soul gets elevated. If you do the wrong thing, you take 2 steps back. You take 3 steps back. So now at the end, just like we're recording now, there are 2 angels follow us everywhere, and they're going to record everything we do. Once they record everything we do, a person dies, they're going to give testimony in front of God, in front of the heavenly court, and then God is going to judge. God is going to judge the person, right? So we 100%, the Torah it speaks clear, right? So I'm not, an expert in Christian literature, right? But the Torah says clear, you do the right thing, there's reward. You do the wrong thing, there's payback. We say that in the Shema, right? Second paragraph of the Shema. So the fact that someone can come back, someone seemingly can, someone is going to come and is going to atone for everybody. Who says everyone gets atoned for? There are sins that a person may not atone for if they don't repent. They may lose their portion in the world to come. That's what it means that a person can get spiritually cut off if they desecrate Shabbos on purpose, if they eat leavened products on Passover. What's the punishment? They get spiritually cut off. So even if spiritually cut off means when a person dies, they go poof, in my language. They die like a dog. That's it. Their soul gets disintegrated, whatever that means. They have no portion in the world to come. So logically speaking, that we would say that's called pass the buck. Someone's going to come and die for your sins. That means I don't have to take responsibility for my actions. That goes against everything the Torah says. Every last thing the Torah says is about your own responsibility and how that affects you, how that affects others. I'll just give one example because I know I got about 30 seconds left.
You're good. Go ahead. And I think your internet just froze. Yep, it did. Cool. If you're not, I'm gonna. Yep, we're back.
Yeah.
We're back. Okay, you're good.
Are we good?
We're good.
So the idea is, he wrote a book. Rav Kaplan wrote a book called Made in Heaven. It's a book about marriage, right? Preparing a person for marriage. So what does Rav Kaplan say? Rav Kaplan's introduction says this doesn't affect you. It not just doesn't affect you. It affects your child. It affects all your future kids. This union. So I'm like, who, me? And I shut the book. I didn't get past the introduction. Because that's pretty intense. In other words, what we do, not only affects us, it affects others, affect our spouse, can affect our kids, right? How 2 parents, interact and how they discipline and how they raise their kids, right? Who are the biggest influences on kids? It's not in school, it's their parents, right? It's the family structure. So how can it be, it's like saying, well, we don't take responsibility for anything, right? Someone's going to come and, bring everything back. Who says? We're totally responsible for everything we do, right? And we can have far-reaching repercussions, not just for our kids, but in the world and spiritual world, in other things that we don't even realize. We have no idea. Right, so that's the second part. What was the third part of the question?
I think we actually covered the third part in the first part because we kind of did 2 parts at a time. Okay, so
very good.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next thought. And I'm bringing these questions up out of my own head because we're just waiting for more callers to call in. And since we're on the topic of this, and rather than asking you questions about what's wrong with the New Testament, I'll just ask you what's the purpose of Tanakh. And so going to the Passover lamb. So the Passover, I will tell you what Christianity says, and you can tell me how the Tanakh differs from that. So the Christianity says that the Passover lamb was a sin sacrifice. I'll stop there. There's a lot more to it, but I'll just stop right there. Was Passover, did it have My understanding of that, it didn't have to do with sin. It had to do with leaving Egypt, and it didn't.
Right.
Right. So,
Right.
if you want to comment on that for a minute or so.
Yeah. So if you look at, what was the last thing the Jewish people had to do coming out of Egypt? Imagine they've gone through 10 plagues, right? They've gone through 10 plagues. You got the plague of darkness, etc. And Moshe Rabbeinu. So the killing before the killing of the firstborn, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses himself, tells the Jewish people, listen, you got one other thing you have to do in order to get out of Egypt. The last thing you have to do is you have to take a sheep, which is their God, and you have to kill it in front of them, and you have to take the blood. Now they're going to say that's blood for JC, but there's no connotation at all right over here. You have to take the blood, put it on your doorpost.
Now, real quickly, so if you're a Christian watching this right now, what you just heard is correct, and that is that Jesus was not the Lamb of our God. He was the Lamb of the Egyptian God. So Jesus, if you really want to cling to that whole Passover sacrifice, then that means that you're confessing that Jesus was an idol.
Okay.
So
God tells Moses, tell the Jewish people, they have to take the blood of their God. I mean, that's the whole purpose. Final self-sacrifice. That's the final test. God's going to say, you went through all these things, etc. But the only way to get out is you have to have this tremendous self-sacrifice. And the self-sacrifice is you're going to take the blood. You're going to take the blood of the sheep, which represents their God. Remember, God says to Abraham, when Abraham wants to understand God's attributes and all that, God says, your progeny are going to suffer in a land not their own, and I'm going to judge their gods. I'm totally going to judge their gods, right? So now, this God, that was the first thing. Well, the first of the plagues was blood. Why, why blood, right? Why by the river Nile, the Nile River over there? Why? Because that was also, they worshiped, right? So God says, I'm going to judge their gods. So what does he do? He tells Moses, okay, tell the people, put the blood on the doorpost. And I'm going to kill the firstborn, and I'm going to skip over. I'm going to pass over. Get it? I'm going to pass over, Jewish homes that put the blood on the door. And when they put on the blood on the door, that's unbelievable self-sacrifice, right? So it's not a sin offering. It has nothing to do with the sin offering. There are sin offerings, that the Torah speaks about, in the book of Leviticus. Some things you did on purpose, by accident, different things. It has nothing to do with that. That has to do with killing their God in front of them, 100% self-sacrifice, in order for the Jewish people to get out. Because, the Jewish people scream out and they say, they said, Moses, how can we do this? We're going to kill their God in front of them. Moses says, that's what God said. I don't care. That's what you have to do. If you don't do it, you don't get out. Nothing to do with a sin offering. Not at all. Right? It's killing the lamb to put the blood on the door to show self-sacrifice in order for them to get out. So now they put their own spin on it. Okay, there are a lot of things, throughout Tanakh that they'll say, okay, this is a hint. I had these Mormons come to my door and they wanted to claim, when I was in South America, they wanted to claim the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, was also a hint to JC. Right? It was also this big hint. I said, wow, that's a great idea. There's only one problem. They said, what's that? I said, you read the end of the story, he doesn't die. Right? Forget about Kabbalah. He doesn't, he doesn't die. The story is Isaac doesn't die. So how can this be maybe they knew Kabbalah. I don't know. They didn't quote it.
Right.
Right? Forget about Kabbalah. He doesn't die. If he doesn't die, and we don't believe in human sacrifice because the Torah says by Molech, by the idol Molech, different definitions of what it is. One definition is that people threw their children into this fire in front of the idol, and that's called an abomination, right? So that'd be clear proof we don't believe in human sacrifice. But even so, one of their proofs is he doesn't die, right? Isaac doesn't die. So I asked them the question. I mean, they weren't the brightest people I ever dealt with, but I asked them the question: if he doesn't die, how can you tell me he's a hint? Mm-hmm. The story clearly says he doesn't die. Right? Simple explanation without oral law, right. Without Kabbalah. The Karaites will love me, right? No other extraneous, interpretation. right? And this is a huge problem because they take so many things out of context and say, yeah, this is a hint and this is what it means. Where do you see that? Where do you see that? This sacrifice, this is not even an animal sacrifice. This is killing their God in front of them, you're not putting it on an altar. You're not putting the blood on an altar. It's going on the doorpost. Oh, you can tell me maybe the doorpost represents an altar and it's all hinted allegories and we all ate the same hallucinogenic mushroom in the desert. Maybe, right? But simple explanation, certainly not that one.
Right. Yeah. I had one of my favorite movies back in the older days was a movie called Tombstone, and it's still actually my favorite Western movie. But they had one thing that they did was that they would they were the bad guys were called the cowboys, and they wore these red sashes around their waist, and so the way they would put fear into the good guys would put fear in the cowboys is when they would wipe out one of the cowboys, they would take that sash and wave it at them, saying, "Hey, look here, buddy. I got you. I've taken care of that." So in my mind, it's like that makes perfect sense to me why they would smear the blood of the Egyptian lamb on the doorposts was to say, "Hey, we don't fear you. I'm not afraid of you." And then Hashem would come and rescue them. So that's really cool.
Well, one question actually comes up from this. Someone asks, we're not allowed to worship anybody, no intermediaries, except for God. So the question comes up. What about going to the gravesite, of a great rabbi,
or even like even like Sarai,
Yeah, you go to the cave of the patriarch. Right. For instance, you go to Rachel's tomb. For instance, there are people that learn there, the people that pray there, all the time. So people say, someone asks, what about the Lubavitcher Rebbe? People go there. Let's make clear, in any of these cases, you go to a righteous person's grave. If you go to a righteous person's grave, 100%, if you pray to the person, everyone will agree that's idolatry. Right. Now, you're going to tell me, maybe some people do it, right? Someone points out, well, what about the Lubavitcher Rebbe? So I can't answer. I can't answer, what's going on in the minds of people. If they're going and worshiping the Rebbe or worshiping any righteous person, again, Cave of the Patriarchs, Rachel's tomb, they go to Joseph's tomb if they can actually, get there in one piece. Right. Regardless, you're not there praying to the person.
Yeah, right.
What are you saying when you're there? You're saying Tehillim, you're saying Psalms, you're asking in the merit of this person. Asking in the merit of the person, you're not praying to them.
Right.
You're not using them as an emissary. They're not an intermediary.
I would like to drop a thought. So people like Christians, Messianics, a lot of them will say that very thing, that it's idolatry to go and pray at the grave, but for some reason they don't think it's idolatry, and I understand why, but I'm going somewhere with this. They say it's not idolatry to go to the wall in Israel and pray. The whole point, from what I understand, of going anywhere to pray is to kind of stir up your mind and to kind of get you into the mode of focus. And so when you're standing at the wall, it's like your surroundings program you to focus more. You get into the idea of prayer more and deeper, and you can really connect better that way. And it's not, you're not praying to the wall, you're not praying to the person, you're praying at the wall, you're praying at the grave.
So some people think,
right,
when they pray, maybe they are praying. Maybe you're standing near a wall in the synagogue. They say, "Well, I'm just praying to a wall." We don't, you're not in front of anybody, and all that. But think about what the Western Wall represents. It's, it's the outer wall. The Western Wall totally, the rest of the temple, totally destroyed. So when they went there and they gave sacrifices, and they prayed, they didn't pray to the wall. Right? God's presence was there, or even by the second temple, God's presence not there, right? But you're right. Your mind, 100%, has to focus. It doesn't make sense in a certain way that a person, idol worship today. You tell me, okay, the people making, maybe they're not making sacrifices. They're, using stones and sticks and this and that. building something up. But again, they want a physical representation.
Right.
Most people, when it came to idolatry, just in general, they didn't believe the idol could do anything. The famous medrash that says by Abraham, his father, Terach, had a whole store selling idols. So Terach walks out one day. What does Abraham do? He destroys all the idols.
And he blames it on the biggest idol there. That was great.
Right. And he puts a stick in the biggest idol, right? And so comes along Terach and says, "Hey, what happened over here?" So, "Oh, the idols fought, and there's a whole big war. And this idol, was a sole survivor." So what does Terach say? Terach says, "Abe, come on. These idols have no power. They can't really do anything." Right? So what does Abraham say? What does Abraham say? He says, "Dad, that's a great question. So why do you worship them?" Right? So what does Terach do? He says, "Oh, smart aleck kid, I'm going to take you to King Nimrod." Right? We're going to see how you're going to answer Nimrod. And what does Nimrod do?
Throws him in a fire.
Furnace.
Yep.
Right. Throws him in a fiery furnace. Right? So what is idolatry? What's the manifestation? They understood these things don't have power.
Yeah.
They understood they don't have power. Right? But what do people think? Pharaoh made this mistake. Others made this mistake. The God's too lofty. He has nothing to do with this world. So we put other things in charge, other powers in charge. The wind, fire. All these things. But these things, as we mentioned before, don't have their own. They don't have their own power. And because they don't have their own power, you put power to something that it doesn't have. That's called idolatry, right? Essentially, that's called idolatry, right? So over here, it's a physical manifestation. That's, that is essentially what the golden calf was, is that they didn't believe, even though if you look at the verses, it's a hard thing to understand, but, in general, they didn't believe this calf took them out of Egypt. Certainly not. The calf ate, the calf spoke, different things. They certainly didn't believe that. But at the same time, they needed some physical representation. Because, the king, Moses himself, disappeared, right? He's not coming back, or it seems like he's not coming back. So they needed a physical manifestation. Now, what would we call that in the vernacular? Call that idolatry, right? That's essentially what idolatry is. But, at the same time, they're putting a physical thing in front of their face to say that this is what it represents. Not that the thing has power itself, right? They understood it doesn't have power. Right, in and of itself doesn't have power. It's just a manifestation. But even if it's a manifestation, there are no intermediaries. If there are if there are intermediaries, right, that means that's idolatry. Right, essentially, you're giving power to something that it doesn't have.
All right, nice. Well, guess what? We are almost at the top of the hour. We got about 7 minutes left, but we don't have to go on to something else. Our phone call is kind of leveled out, so that's fine. We can actually make that for a wrap if you want. I think we covered a lot of good things tonight that were. I really did enjoy the Q&A, even though some questions we can get to, some of them we can't. But I think it's kind of cool because we get more topics in. Instead of doing one topic for an hour, we kind of put like a 10-minute spin on each topic that comes in. Sometimes we'll finish early. It gives us more time, but a 10-minute limit on it will give us a lot more questions per show. So if you guys in YouTube land enjoyed that, then let me know that. Let me know in the chat or whatever. If you'd like to keep open conversations for calling with the questions on the show, we can certainly do that in the future, at least a couple times anyway. And if you have a really pressing topic that would require more explanation, send that to us as well, and we'll dedicate an hour for it. So, but either way, it's been fun. Tonight was it was.
It's always fun. Come on, that's why I get up in the middle of the night to do this. It's so much fun. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So it's 8:00 here now. What time is it there?
It is 4 a.m.
So you got up. So you got up at 2:30 in the morning, or you stayed awake.
No, I didn't stay awake.
So you got up at 2:30. What time do you have to go to bed to wake up at 2:30 in the morning?
I would say which never happens, and that is that you should probably go to sleep 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock, get 5 hours of sleep. So
that makes sense.
I can last on 5-6 hours of sleep.
I do good on 5 or 6. I do good on 5. That makes sense.
That's
cool.
That's definitely possible. By the end of the week, I'll pretty much crash. But I don't normally get 6 hours of sleep. But I'm not gonna say what time I went to sleep last night. So
all right.
I went to sleep definitely later than 8 o'clock. Definitely later than 9 o'clock. So technically should go to sleep much earlier. But
Right. That's cool.
That's because I'm the Energizer Bunny, and I don't even drink coffee. Imagine if I drank coffee.
Good. You don't
if I
need
drank
coffee.
you'd all be dead. That's
Look.
just the way
If
it
you
is.
drank coffee, none of us would be able to understand you. You already talk so fast.
That's-
We have to
that's
play
it.
it back in half speed to catch everything you're saying.
I feel sorry for people that don't speak English as a first language. That's just grew up in the Northeast. That's just that's just the way it is. So I tell people, right, turn down the volume and do it at least a half speed or a quarter speed. Then you'll figure out everything, and then you're going to be able to hear me say, Paul is dead. Right? We'll replay the Revolver album, and you'll get that from them.
That's funny. Oh my gosh. All right, guys, thank you. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on all notifications. There is a little bell icon there. If you just subscribe and that's it, then you may or may not get notifications. You have to click on the little bell icon and select how many of the notifications you want. Select all and share the YouTube videos and follow me on Facebook because that's where I do most of my spending time. I'm going to be getting on Twitter and Instagram soon, but it's going to come after the new website is fully developed, which is going to be here in another week or two. So with all that said, thank you all. And we'll see you same time, same place, Hashem willing, next week. Shalom, Rabbi. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, guys. See you next week. Shalom, my dear friends, followers, and supporters of Tanakh Talk. I would like for you, if you find this channel helpful in any way, and if it has benefited you, please consider supporting Tanakh Talk on a monthly basis. For the first time in 8 years, Baruch Hashem, I am now working Tanakh Talk full-time. So having your consistent support is more important now than ever before. The long-term benefits will be excellent. I am finally able to invest the time and energy into the channel that I had intended on in the very beginning, bringing on more shows with more varieties of teachers and more types of classes. The ultimate goal will be to have 12 to 15 shows per week, plus a lot more. Now, this is going to take some time, of course, but this is the direction that the channel is certainly headed. Also, I'm having a new website built by donors that's going to be more interactive and useful for everyone. Up until now, YouTube has been my only go-to for most everything Tanakh Talk related, with the exception of the donate button. The new website will completely override the entire website with a slightly different branding curve as well. Same Tanakh Talk, correct spelling. Praise Hashem, with this new website build, the resources will be much easier to locate and utilize. It will also allow me to send out bulk update emails on a fairly regular basis. There's much more to say, but in an effort to keep this video as short as possible, I will end with this. Many of you have been donating for a very long time. Some of you are new. Some of you have been with me since the beginning. That has been very key in keeping this program running for so long. So with all my heart and all my family's heart, thank you so much for your steady support. This is merely the beginning of a long journey, however, and I would be honored to have you all join me along the way. Shalom with lots of love from Tanakh Talk and the Hall family. If you are planning on starting to donate now, just simply go to PayPal and just search for Tanakh Talk by using the email address, tanakhtalk@gmail.com. Patreon is similar, but you can type it in the URL, patreon.com, patreon.com/Tanakh Talk. Thank you again very much for your consideration.